welcome to the Big Success Show. Today, the recipe for a happy life, brought to you by financialfreedomtool.com. Plenty of money for life.
Tips to be your best with the professor and Mary-Lynn for your big success.
The recipe for a happy life consists of 3 ingredients.
Only 3?
Just 3, Mary-Lynn.
I might actually be able to make that.
Now, the thing is, the ingredients are important, but how you mix them all together is really important. We're going to talk about both parts of this today. Hi, I'm George Kruger, a.k.a. The Professor.
And I'm Mary-Lynn. Today's show is inspired by an academic paper. Oh, Professor.
Very highbrow.
Yeah. Not by this professor.
No.
But the paper is on a happy life. And happy life is defined as a full life versus an empty life.
Yes, and Mary-Lynn, we're calling it a happy life, but in psychological terms, terms do mean something. They're talking about life satisfaction. So, but we're just abbreviating that kind of and saying happy.
Right. Not the people who say, I can't get no satisfaction. It's the people who say, I get satisfaction.
There you go.
All right, so let's go over the 3 ingredients for this happy life. And the first ingredient is pleasure.
Sounds good, doesn't it?
It does.
I mean, who doesn't want to be in, have pleasure in their life, right?
You want to have a pleasant day, a pleasurable day. You want to see pleasurable things. That's part of how you choose the neighborhood you live in.
Yes.
You want to be around pleasurable people.
But there's a tendency to think that pleasure can be kind of negative, right?
True.
That we think of excess.
Guilty pleasures.
You love that one, don't you, Melanie? Guilty pleasures.
Yeah.
Well, and this all dates back, hundreds and hundreds, in fact, like almost thousands of years, all the way back to when it was called, or it's been known as hedonism. And we're all familiar probably with that term. It's founded by a guy by the name of Aristippus. And I thought it was interesting, Mary-Lynn.
What pleasure is? Or?
No, this theory that we should be pursuing pleasure.
Okay.
That man's desire, the best way to have a great life is to just pursue pleasure.
Okay.
That's what Aristippus
Just
says.
pursue pleasure?
Yes. It's
Okay.
all, it's kind of black and white.
So he says just use the one ingredient.
Correct.
You don't need all 3.
Yes, and we're going to find out that the second ingredient is also said to use just one ingredient.
Okay.
So we've got a little battle going here, but then you'll see what kind of the modern view is. But here's the point. Aristippus, when I look back to see what's the origins of this theory, right? And I thought it was kind of interesting because really what it was about was keeping control in times of adversity or prosperity. And, Mary-Lynn, I'll tell a little tale. As we were discussing this show, you found it interesting that adversity came up with pleasure.
Yeah, so he's saying to find pleasure in good things and in bad things.
Yes, and so, we don't normally think of that, right? But here's the deal. His goal or his thought was that we should extract enjoyment, and maybe even the maximum enjoyment, from every circumstance. That's kind of another way of saying don't let your circumstances control you, control your circumstances.
Right.
Or at least your reaction to it.
Listening to this concept, as a Cubs fan... I thought of the perfect
I already know where you're going on this.
You can have highs and lows and lows and lows and lows.
Yes.
And so the goal is to not make the highs be too high, right? When they win the World Series, don't go bonkers.
Yes.
And when they don't win the World Series, they don't make it to the World Series. And I don't think that the world is coming to an end. You have to stay even keel no matter what happens.
I think actually what Aristippus is saying is, in all situations, extract the maximum enjoyment that you possibly can. Okay, that's pursuing pleasure.
Okay.
So in good times, we're going to extract great stuff. Even in adversity, though, in bad times, when the Cubs are down, we're going to still enjoy. We're going to enjoy, if we go to the ballpark, we're going to enjoy the hot dog and the soda. Or if we go to, if we watch it on TV with our friends, that's a great experience. We're going to remember the players, a play. There's still a lot of things to enjoy, even though the team may not be on track to win the World Series.
Okay, that makes sense. Moving on to ingredient 2 in the recipe for happy life, and that is meaning.
Yes, or as the academics like to call it, eudaimonia.
Okay, whatever you say.
Eudaimonia. It's like eudaman. Eudaimonia.
It sounds like a sickness.
And now, you notice the last one was just kind of one person. This is also one person, and that one person you've probably heard of, Aristotle.
Oh, yes.
Okay, so Aristotle is kind of the father of this meaning orientation, that man's best fulfillment comes from pursuing meaning. And what he's saying is, this sounds all familiar, identify your values, cultivate them, and then live in alignment with them. Pretty simple.
So what's meaningful to you? Is it family? Is it community? Is it making a difference? I know for us, George, it's empowering other people to be able to go after and to achieve the life that they want. So what is it that really brings meaning to your life? And that's what you should pursue to have a happy life.
Absolutely. I couldn't say it any better, Mary-Lynn.
All right, so that moves us on to the third ingredient for happy life, which is engagement.
Yeah, also known as flow. So I think a lot of people may have heard the flow or the flow state, the flow zone, those kinds of terms. This is actually a modern incarnation. So this is a new one. So for centuries, we had pleasure or meaning. But now positive psychologists in our modern era have come up with this third one. This was discovered by a guy or put forth by a guy by the name of Mihai Csikszentmihalyi.
Whoa.
I hear his friends call him Mike.
Oh, that makes me happy. No, and you can check our show notes for the spelling of that. And
There you go.
get a gold star, Professor, for pronouncing that name right the first try.
Well, and so this is really, and I think we've all experienced this. There's certain activities that you could get involved in where you're just hyper focused. I mean, like you lose track of yourself. Time just flies by. You don't even have a concept of time.
So this is an activity that you're just super, super engaged in. You are
Absolutely.
just focused, like you said earlier, in the zone.
That's it. You're in the zone and you just feel completely invigorated, especially, I mean, as you're experiencing it, you're just in it. But afterwards, you feel completely invigorated and just excited. And, and when I think of this, Mary-Lynn, the very first thing I think of is you, and I think of you in audio production. Because I guarantee you get into a flow state. I can't get your attention. I mean, the house could be burning down. I still couldn't get your attention.
Well, part of that's because I have headphones on and I'm listening intently. But no, I do. I love doing audio production. From my radio broadcast days, it was a skill that I learned, and it's so much fun. So I used to produce audio commercials. And so, you've got to add sound effects and add music and, the way that you read it. And you've got to remove breaths and little weird, sounds from your mouth and things like that. So I totally get into it whenever I do that, especially when we get to do creative work for big success. And we've recreated the Kentucky Derby, and so it sounds like you're actually at the Kentucky Derby. And we did that ourselves. Work that we've done from Microsoft, where we did a production where some of their employees would be getting a massage and they would hear us. And so, just making us sound all kind of dreamy and fun, and being able to do fun stuff like this whenever I want.
Of course, Mary-Lynn. You had to add that in there. One of my earliest memories of you, though, is we were still, like, we weren't even really friends yet. We just had met. We got to know each other, or we're getting to know each other, and you were supposed to be out that night, so of course I went out that night because I wanted to see you. But you got waylaid at the radio station because there was some audio production that you had to do, and you were so into it. So I remember my friend and I, we came and visited you at the radio station, and you're showing me all this work and let me listen to it and everything, and it's great, but it's like, but I'd rather just come out and, met with
You
me for
weren't
fun.
impressed with my audio production?
I was totally impressed with your audio
You told
production.
me you were.
But I will tell you, you lost track of time.
Yes, I did. And I still do to this day
There you go.
in my own home studio here at Big Success headquarters. So we've talked about the three ingredients now for happiness: pleasure, meaning, and engagement. So what's the right mix?
Hopefully this really helps you it helped me to kind of put it this way, because these terms, pleasure, meaning, flow, okay, what does that mean in terms of my happiness, right? I kind of get it, but yet I kind of don't. So think of it this way. Meaning is the meat.
Okay.
Flow is the potatoes.
All right.
And pleasure is the spice.
Nice.
Okay, so that's kind of, hopefully helps you kind of get a picture of this. We're going to talk about this a little bit more here shortly.
Coming up, the instructions for the recipe to a happy life after this message from our sponsor, financialfreedomtool.com.
Do you feel doubt when making money decisions? Let the Financial Freedom Tool be your decision-making guide 24/7, 365 days a year, so you can make your next money moves with confidence. Learn more at financialfreedomtool.com.
Today, we're talking about the ingredients in the recipe for a happy life. Their pleasure, meaning, and engagement. Now we're going to talk about the instructions for this recipe.
So Mary-Lynn, the sum, the first thing we want to talk about is the sum is worth more or less than the parts. So we could probably think of 2 food ingredients that put together just sound horrible, right? Like sardines with, well, you kind of like sardines though.
I do not.
I'm sorry, you don't like sardines.
Kidding?
But let's just say somebody likes sardines and somebody likes sauerkraut. But you put them all together,
that just sounds awful.
well, I'm trying to sound awful.
Awful.
But now, peanut butter and jelly.
Oh, yes.
Okay, so there we've got something spicy, something salty. Oh, that works together really nice, right?
What's spicy in peanut butter and jelly?
I'm sorry, not spicy, salty and sweet.
Sweet, okay.
Yes,
yeah.
yes. So the point is that when the psychologist asks these participants to kind of record how they're feeling about things and what their orientation is and how they pursue happiness, one of the things that they found was that the people who scored simultaneously low on all 3, in other words, they're not really pleasure-seeking, they're not really meaning-seeking, and they're not really seeking flow. Not surprisingly, those people had less satisfaction with life, and they were identified as people with an empty life. Okay? For whatever reason. Now, the best advice for people like that, probably, if you happen to feel like you're that way, nothing's making you happy, it's probably time to talk to a professional. Okay. I mean, that's the best thing you can do. The opposite of that, okay, the peanut butter and jelly part, is the people who scored high simultaneously on all 3, those people had more satisfaction with life. They were dubbed the people with a full life. So there's a way to combine these 3 ingredients where the sum is worth more than the parts. And that's what we want to strive to do. We want to strive to put them together in a way that makes our life even more rich.
Well, if my life was like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich every day, I'm telling you,
there you go.
I'd be jumping around for joy. But so now, is the goal to have all 3 of the ingredients equal?
No. The goal is to have the 3 ingredients. We like to say to have a custom blend, okay? A lot of people talk about balance, but here's the thing. It's not balance. We're not trying to get all 3 in some kind of symmetry or some kind of, equal order. We're trying to add them in a way that maximizes our happiness. Okay?
I mean, really, it's just important to make sure that you have each of these 3 ingredients, pleasure, meaning, and engagement, in your life.
Yes. And what we find is that while pleasure is probably not as high on the scale as the others, in other words, pleasure is kind of a supplement to the other 2.
Okay.
But it's still a very, very important ingredient. The thing is, though, we're kind of pre-programmed for a certain level of pleasure. Like some people want more pleasure than others. You need to find out what that is for you, and then that's what you put in. But the combination of meaningful activities, engaging activities, and now throw in a little pleasure, that's the way to really maximize and optimize your happiness. And Mary-Lynn, let me give you an example of this. So let's just say that we realize that we could use some help with communication. Communication is maybe a weakness, and that we could get more engaged in our work if we were able to communicate better, okay? So we work on our communication, but the thing is, that turns out that it helps us at home. It helps us with our friends. It helps us when we're doing those activities that are pleasing. So all of this stuff can work synergistically, and that's what we're really striving for. We're striving to find that point where everything is just working to where we just feel alive as we're living.
Everything's just working together.
Yes.
And just pumping out happiness.
You betcha. There it is.
All right. So how can we apply this then to our personal finances? At Big Success, we talk about helping people have more money so that they can do more good. So how does this apply to that?
Well, if you think about it, you want to blend pleasurable activities with meaningful and engaging pursuits. We just kind of said that. But you need to do that with your money. So here's an example. Studies show that if you invest, okay, so we're really spending, but let's call it an investment because all money out, we believe, is an investment. It's an investment in your future happiness, in your present and future happiness. But if you invest in experiences, studies show you increase your happiness. So in other words, instead of buying something, we do something. You know, we have an experience, and ideally we have that experience with loved ones and friends, because now we're really kicking up that happiness. So you can see we're blending these activities together. Those are meaningful activities mixed with pleasurable activities. And when we can spend our money on those, we're going to be happier. And that's big success.
That brings us to today's big takeaway.
Fill the better part of your life with meaningful and engaging activities. Toss with a pleasurable pursuit, and your heart will be filled with happiness.
And we thank you so much for listening to our show today. Until next time,
Here's to your big success.
Tips to be your best with the Professor and Mary-Lynn for your big success.
Find big success at biggsuccess.com.